Hi, this is Steve Addison, and you're listening to the Movements Podcast, the podcast for people who want to multiply disciples and churches everywhere. Today, we're somewhere in Asia talking to a couple we'll call Tim and Lydia. We're going to hear the story of how God called them to multiply disciples and churches cross-culturally, and how he not only called them, but shaped them as a family.
Really, the story, I think, begins in college. I had a pastor ask me, he said, actually charged all of us, he said, hey, the world tells you to get a good degree, get a good job, and then, here in the Bible Belt, go find a good church. But he said, what if you did it the other way around? What if you found a place that you got spiritually nurtured and then trusted God for a good job? And that made sense to us. As we finished college, we did that. There was a church plant going out to another university, and we did that. And we trusted God for a good job, and he provided us my dream job. And Lydia here was we already had kids at that time. And so that's where I think it really started. During our time there, it was amazing. But during our time there, we started calling out more and more, saying, we're missing something. God, what is it that you're calling us to do? And soon an answer came, and we heard, one night, we heard a voice, or more specifically, I heard a voice. And what I heard was my name and a couple of words that sounded like a thing. And I was like, I don't know what that is. Mm-hmm. And so I Google it, and turns out it's not a thing, it's a place. And I look at my wife, and I'm like, first off, did you hear anything? Because I swore I heard somebody talking. And second one, what does that mean to you? And she didn't know, so we decided to pray about it.
Yeah. So during that time, I just heard over and over in my mind just the phrase, "You are called there," which terrified me. And
what I was hearing was, you're supposed to move there. So all of our plans of me being a nice, stable engineer for my wife and her family, I was all of a sudden becoming a different person than she married, because this lit a fire inside of me and her as well. And so the rest of the night we Googled it, and we learned about unreached peoples. We learned about God's mission. We learned about so many things that I think was what our heart was groaning for. What then happened after that was God did some really cool things. That week was the first week that my boss at the engineering firm, just a few days after this, comes in and says, hey, we'd like you to we'd like you to help us start a new company. And this was everything I dreamed of. I dreamed of owning my own engineering company before I was 30, and to be making more than 6 digits is what I wanted to be doing. And here, just a few days after God's call, this came along. And as I shared this with my boss, I said, well, I'm very interested in this, but but I might have just heard God speak. And if it was him, then I'm going to have to move across the world. And just by God's grace, I had a very godly boss. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, you can do both. While we work on this new company and venture capitalism, the startup, you can pursue just checking to see if this really was God speaking to you. And so I didn't have to decide early on. So that was God's hand and God's grace, even in the midst of something that I thought was my ultimate life dream. And so that allowed us to start pursuing training. We ended up moving to Austin, Texas, where we got some more training. And so we gave away, we just gave away half of our stuff and moved from a nice big home to a wonderful little place.
At the same time, I was so grateful that the Lord had given us both confirmation of it. Now looking back, since that time, I've met several couples where one of them feels called or led and the other does not for a while. And that's really difficult. But within 5 minutes of Tim hearing a voice, the Lord confirmed it in me as well. And we were able to be together in moving forward with it. Mm-hmm. It took a process of the Lord kind of opening my mind and heart to what he's doing around the world, and just to set my heart on the nations instead of building a kingdom for myself. But I'm so grateful for the way that he did it.
Interesting. When we moved, we were actually pregnant with the fourth, and soon after we moved, we just sacrificed from our perspective. We'd left everybody we knew. We moved to a city we didn't really know very many people in, and gave away half our stuff, and just living in a junky little place, paying more than our mortgage was on our nice big home in the other city. We're paying more for rent, and then that's when we had just a late term. We lost the baby late term.
Okay.
And that was a really hard time. I remember that was a time where we were really struggling. Like, okay, we just sacrificed more than anything, and yet at the same time, what God. I remember just thinking, like, God, do you even really exist? I was like, what's going on? What the heck? And so I think what God was doing is he was preparing a couple of things. And so for me, after a couple of weeks of really struggling with that, came down with, David says, he couldn't go to his son won't come to him, but he can go to his son. And I realized my daughter won't come back here, but I will go to my daughter. And so for me, what I realized, I said, oh man, well, the sooner this Great Commission gets finished by Matthew 24, he says, when everybody hears the gospel, Jesus is coming back. And I was like, oh man. And I was thinking through Peter, and I was just like, wow, he's waiting on us for this Great Commission. And so in me, it just sparks like, well, shoot, I get to see my daughter the sooner we finish this thing.
So for me, it did a couple of things. One was just set my heart on heaven. It became a much more real place to me when I have a daughter there. And I'm much more eager for the day when I get to go there, because I know I get to see her. But then the other thing that it did was just completely shake my false sense of control and security. If I couldn't protect my daughter in America, in my own body, if I couldn't do anything to save her life, then what control do I really have? And so the question we wrestled with, and I wrestled with a lot, was, okay, is God good through all of this? He's in control. Is he good? And I just landed on yes, he is. And I had to have a procedure to have her removed. And I woke up from anesthesia from that procedure worshiping. I woke up singing the song Jesus is Better. And I was looking around at the room. There were several people recovering from various different things, and my heart just broke for them. And I knew this is the Lord, and he is working in my heart right now. He's doing something bigger in my heart, and I was so grateful.
Yeah, so that moment had a much bigger impact on us probably than we realize. Even as I tell it now, I'm like, I think it's still having a bigger impact. It's an underlying driving moment. And from that point then, we started getting more and more information about how to make disciples. And so God was working on our hearts, I think, early on. The American dream was going away. We lost a baby. All these things happened. And then he's like, okay, now here you go. We we got training, and the first thing that we were told is, this is what you do. You ask somebody, have you ever read the Bible, and would you like to with me? And I asked my boss if I could work one day from home, and he said yes. I actually worked one day from Starbucks. He said that was fine as well. I was like, yeah, that's fine. And so we tried it out. So I'd sit there and I'd be on my computer working, and a guy walked in, and he looked Middle Eastern. Turned out he was from Saudi, and so I walked over to him. I put up my stuff, and I walked over to him and said, "Hey, what are you reading?" And he looked at me and he's like, "Where's your coffee? You don't have a coffee. You need a coffee." And he got up and bought me a coffee, and I was like, "Wow, okay." So I sat there, and he came back, and then he reciprocated the question afterwards. He said, What have you been reading lately?" And I was like, "Well, I read a lot of the Bible." And I was like, "Oh man, here I go. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I was trained to do. Have you ever read the Bible?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Would you like to with me?" And he goes, "Yeah, that'd be great."
So is he the first person you asked that question to?
Yep. And I remember thinking, I was like, wait, what? You do? Okay. And I was like, well, can we go to your house Tuesday? He's like, Tuesday night sounds great. So we went to his house on Tuesday night. And what we saw was, on that first night we read, and at the end I was like, would you like to do this again? And he's like, yes, but, and I was like, oh man, here it is. People aren't actually interested in reading the Bible. He's gonna shut it down now. And he goes, yes, but could we do it again before next Tuesday? So could we do like Thursday in between? So twice a week? And so our rhythm during that time, so we started going out all the time. I remember we had prayer at like 5:30 in the morning, was at work by 6:30 or 7. And then would work all the way till late, get home like 6 or 6:30, eat dinner with the family, help put the kids down to bed around 8. Then either Lydia or I would head out, and we would go knock on doors, share Bible studies, whatever it was, until 9 or 10, come home, go to sleep, and then back up again at prayer at 5:30 in the morning. I don't recommend that schedule for a prolonged period of time. But what God was doing was preparing us through that time. We got to, Ying Kai was coming to Austin, and me and a friend had been asking the Lord just Lord, how do we see a movement in Austin? And so we'd been segmenting up the city, getting ready for all of that. Well, then Ying Kai came. My friend was actually interviewing Ying in front of a whole group. And at the end of this interview, we said, we asked Ying, how do we start a movement here? What do we do? And he said, you need to talk to this guy in the back. And so we got to talk to this guy in the back of the room. And so his name is Fred, and he's just incredible brother. By the next morning, Fred was in my living room, and I'm calling up my buddy, hey, get over here. Fred's here teaching us. And so from that moment on, then we started learning about getting out in the harvest. We started learning about 4 fields. We started learning about all of these different movement practices. And Fred had already seen generations. And we're like, shoot, this is amazing. Let's go. And then by that winter, this would be fall or winter of 2013, we ended up at this thing called a mid-level. And my friend looks at me when we got in there. He goes, there's a lot of people that have done a lot of amazing things here. God has used a lot of amazing people. And I think, Steve, if I remember right, you were there. And so, but yeah, just, Steve Smith, Jeff Sundell, I think Bill was there. And so it was amazing. Jared, there's just a bunch of guys there, and our mind was blown. Shortly thereafter, that spring after, we were realizing, wow, we're seeing these movements actively change the world. And here I am working on starting a company that, yes, it's going to make a lot of money. It's going to save lives. There's going to be great things that come from this company, but it's not changing the world like what I'm seeing over here on the in these movements. And I realized I was willing to go raise a bunch of venture capitalism for a startup, but I wasn't willing to raise any funds necessary to do this kingdom work. And so it was a big moment for me because I was really focused on business. I thought business was going to be what we were going to do. And even going to our country overseas, my boss had said, yeah, you could run this company from over there. And at that point, when I realized kind of my pride and hypocrisy of my dual thinking on money, I thought, you know what? I could start raising funds on nights and weekends, I guess, because my light bulb went off, and I was like, I can treat this like venture capitalism. This is something that's a worthwhile endeavor. And so at that point, I thought I need to get some wisdom here because we were pregnant again with our fourth child. And it was like, this is not the time to quit and lose all of our health insurance and everything else. But the third guy I talked to on the phone, getting some counsel, he said, Tim, I want to get you in the harvest as soon as possible. And so I'll replace your engineering salary long enough for you to raise your support. And my voice cracked on the phone. I think like I was in sixth grade again. I was like, what? And I got off the phone and just kind of still in disbelief. The kids were asleep, walk in the kitchen, and Lydia's there. She's doing the dishes. And I remember just saying, hey, you're not going to believe this, but God has seemingly orchestrated us the ability to quit my job.
Yeah. So through the whole process of our hearts being pulled, do we do this through business? Do we do this like business as mission? Do we do this? Do we need a support raise? Going back and forth. I just remember feeling really frustrated with the whole thing. A lot of questions and not knowing what to do. And I said, just go figure this out. Go take some time alone and go figure this out. And the Lord spoke to him, and he did. I was pregnant again with our fourth child. And so I was, there was a little bit of me that was nervous. I was like, okay, are we going to lose insurance? Are we going to, there are a lot of questions that come up, but, once the Lord just provided that was such a sense of peace in my heart. It was like, he's got this under control.
Walked into my office the next day and talked to my boss, and he just looked at me and he said, well, it's been really good having you work here. And I said, wait. This has been my dream job. I didn't say I quit yet. I was just looking for some advice. He just looked at me and he just like, it is evident that God is moving. This is what you're supposed to do. And so he sends out an email subject line saying that I had found a better boss. And I was able to go through and again, just share the good news with all my coworkers, and stayed on for 6 weeks. Last day, I'm heading out. I'm in tears, and he stops me and just says, he says that, hey, now that you won't be working for us anymore, my wife and I would like to support you. And so it was such a big deal. I think I just cried the entire drive home, just in God's goodness. 2 days later, we dropped our kids off with family, and we got on a plane and flew to the other side of the world 2 days afterwards. And what was incredible is we met, in the course of 5 days, we met 28 missionaries from 8 different organizations. We had a guy that picked us up from the airport who was martyred 2 years ago. So this was in 2014 that we came here, and he had taken us to an underground church, and it was incredible. And so we just had our minds blown, just asking, what is God doing here? And at the time, there was not a lot of optimism. They said, man, it's a really hard soil. And we're just like, okay, that's why God said here. And we need to get our hearts ready. Well, we then went down to a neighboring country, Muslim country, and we were going from village to village. So just imagine this. It was me and my pregnant wife with a translator walking from village to village, doing what we were calling a legit Luke 10, looking for a house of peace that would take us in, feed us, and give us a bed to sleep in that night. And we had landed, the little bitty plane, propellers stopped turning, and you walk right off the airplane and straight out the gate, basically. And so we drove straight through the night to get to this village. We had a chain-smoking Nintendo dubstep driver for 9 hours through mountain roads, and my pregnant wife was curled up in the back, trying not to throw up. And so she was the real winner there. But what we saw was when we went out, we started proclaiming the gospel, and we saw an entire village come around us, and it was kind of crazy. We had like 30 or 40 people. And so we were starting with some of the prophets and sharing the story. And at some point, after I got through three of the stories, I kind of was like, oh, I wonder if they're still interested. And so I said, do you want me to keep going? And the kind of, I guess, this matriarch in the village said, yes, our men and our children need to hear this. Keep going. And so I kept sharing all the way through Jesus. And soon thereafter, we're kind of walking, and they're like, where are you staying? I was like, I don't know. This military family ended up inviting us in. And so he was fairly high up in the military. I don't know what rank, but they gave us a bed. They fed us some great food, and we got to share with them, learned a ton, saw that, man, people are so open, and an amazing work could just start right now in this area. But as we left, we realized there were not follow-up structures in place. And the multiplication would not continue without somebody there to disciple them. And so we came back and came back to the U.S., and God was so faithful. He prepared a bunch of people that said, yes, we want to join you in this. Our support was raised rather quickly. And then over the next year, we were training in Austin. We had our fourth baby, and then January of 2015, something happened. We got invited up to, I guess it was David Watson's house, and I said, and I was like, hey, I'll come, but can I bring my family? And we ended up crashing the whole family at their house, and from what we left from that weekend there was, we're not ready to go overseas and see a movement. And so we loosened our grip on the country we're being called to. And what happened there was we said, well, Lord, where do you want us to go? And we said, we'll just stay in Austin until you show us. We hadn't seen multiplication. We were faithfully going out. And I was like, I don't even know if we're doing the right things. I mean, we're being told we're doing the right things and to keep going. We're out sharing the gospel. We're out starting Bible studies. We're out, empowering people with discovery methods and the 330, all of these things. But I was like, we haven't seen a movement in our own culture. What makes us think we could add on the complexity of another culture? Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I don't know that we're ready yet, Lord. You know when we're ready. And so it was, again, God confirmed it. We got in the car. We hadn't discussed any of this, and that was what both came out of both our mouths. We're like, we're not ready yet.
Yeah.
But it just felt like God was saying, it's not your time yet. And I want you to hold it more loosely, because we were holding our call to this country with an iron grip. And so we loosened it. I said, all right, we'll keep an eye out for what you got for us. We need to get ready. Well, it it was interesting that later that spring, I think it was March. Yeah. So a bunch of leaders in America, their visas didn't go through, and so they said, "Hey, Tim, now there's room in the car. Would you like to go ahead and go now?" I was like, "Oh man, I'd love to go." And so we got to go through. We got to see tons of people. We got to see like Kumar and Lepak and a lot of these other big movements around, and my mind was blown. And I was like, "Wow, look at this!" We were looking at these generation maps, and just there was a table that was probably 20, 30 feet long, and there were generation maps, poster boards just out across the entire thing, and we just were looking at all, and I just couldn't believe my eyes. I was like, "This is incredible." And
they're generations of new believers and new churches.
Yes, every circle on those maps, and there was, hundreds or thousands of circles out there, and I'm just like looking at how they're all linked together and how they're discipling them and growing them, and I was like, "Wow, this is incredible." At the end of the trip, Nathan looks at me and he goes, "Hey, would you be willing to come to India and learn by doing, and then we'll send you on your way?" And I was like, "Wow, that might be exactly what 3 months ago God was doing when He loosened our grip." And so at that point, I said, "Wow, this is incredible." I went home and asked my wife, "What do you think?" And she said, "No." Okay. And so then she goes,
"And why?
Okay.
Why was that, Lydia? Why did you say no?"
Well, I don't really love change to begin with. So for me, one, the idea of changing plans, that was overwhelming. But yeah, the idea of going to South Asia was not what I had my mind set on. It was not within the realm of what I had planned.
Yeah. But it was like a day later. Like it didn't take long.
It was quick.
It was very quick. She's just like, "Okay, I think this is what God might have for us." And to her credit, she doesn't like change. Never has, probably won't ever. Our lifestyle is a constant change. Our life is a constant change. So she does an amazing job, especially being married to me, where I like change a lot. And so really, we had about 6 months, and then 6 months from there, we went. We were in South Asia, and our main priority this whole time was, where do we get our best mentorship from? So we moved to Austin to get mentorship, and then we met Fred, and then we just kept going through where can we get our best mentorship from? And a lot of these people, they were always connecting us to people, and so we just kept getting more and more mentorship. Well, we wanted to get mentored by the Four Fields guys over there in South Asia. And so we ended up landing, and man, when we landed in, just a huge city, within the first 2 weeks, we hadn't even found a house yet. They said, "Hey, we got a training opportunity set up for you." And so, which was just crazy. Our kids are still jet lagging. Youngest one was a year old. And so like, okay, we're still looking at trying to figure out housing. We're in different government offices trying to figure out paperwork so that we can get in the country. I mean, we'd landed. First night, we got picked up by an Indian brother we didn't know. He goes to drop us off at a house. We have no idea where we are. There's a drunk cop outside yelling at us, not letting us in. The kids are crying and screaming, and everything we own is in this little bus. So welcome to overseas. And so then the next morning, I think we drank some water that wasn't good, and so it was fun. But soon thereafter, we got to meet our supervisor, and just over the next 3 years, just really just grew increasingly grateful for this brother, and so he set up this initial training, And really, that was about all that was needed. He set up his initial training. We met some guys. I walk into training. I'm like, so are you going to model for me, or how does this work? I'm used to these model assist watch. And he goes, no, you're up. Go, man. But what do I train? He goes, I just do the same thing you did in the U.S. Okay. And so I started training. And as far as I know, that was the best training that South Asia's ever seen, because I don't speak a lick of language at this point. And so we started doing that training every other week or so. Lydia started doing a women's training. God did provide us a house, and we were learning how to navigate that. We said, we're not moving halfway across the world to live around a bunch of expats. I want to go live where the people are. And so we moved to the northern part of the city where we didn't find any expats anywhere, which was helpful, because that one time our third child accidentally kind of wandered away. A posse of people brought her back because they knew exactly where the white people live. So what happened, though, was really cool. We started working with different people, and God clearly showed us that many of them weren't the right ones to work through. But we were confident that if God had brought us to this place, that he had also prepared other people that we were supposed to work with. And so I was just trying to find them. I was like, okay, well, if we're not working with you, okay, great, no problem. I was just looking. And within the first few months, one of the guys, he'd been a translator for some short-term teams, and he ended up saying, hey, there's some people in a neighboring village. You want to go? And so I ended up going to this neighboring village with them. We went to 3 different villages and just trained them how to share the gospel, how to, map their oikos, how to go out and pray. And we went back a month later, and 2 of the villages didn't do anything with it. One of them did a lot. They had seen, I think, 40 people come to faith. They shared the gospel between 100 and 200 times. And I was like, okay, wow, all right. And it dawned on me, this is way more productive than me going out and sharing myself. I can go out in a day and share with a lot of people, and Lydia's at home, taking care of our kids and all sorts of stuff, and she would go out as well. But we immediately started realizing, and we kind of operated, I call it like a mom and pop business strategy. I was the worker manning the front desk of the business, but we were co-owners. And so we would discuss at night how to allocate my man hours for the week. And so she would say, yeah, I think it's worth it for you to go here, here, here. And then I would go out. And then God also did something really cool with you, because in the U.S., we were both going out in the harvest, but something happened when we were in South Asia.
Yeah, I came in to South Asia expecting just to be out in the work, out alongside my husband, and reaching women and sharing with them and being really active in it. And I had all these aspirations and goals. And I got a rebuke from the Lord. He said, no, you need to focus in your home right now. Your family needs you to put your effort and your care and your energy into that. And so it was a few months of a struggle in my heart at first, of feeling pulled both directions, feeling like I couldn't do both of them well. And then he finally just got my attention and said, hey, this is my plan for you. Please do this. And that was really helpful for me to just clarify, okay, this is what my priority needs to be. I'm still involved, but that's not my first priority. So that was really helpful.
It was a big adjustment for us, realizing that. And so as we came to that, it's like, well, what does that look like? And so she became a big part of the decision making. So every night I'm coming home and debriefing her on what's going on. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so we would pray and we would talk about it together. And so she was feeding into the word constantly, even though she was in the home. And then, we prayed about it. Within 5 months, I got an opportunity to go to the east side of the country. And it was going to be a longer trip, a little over a week. And during the hottest month of the year, so it's 115 degrees. I leave, and she's at home again. 4 kids, youngest one still in diapers. Third one barely out of diapers, which means there's a lot of messes. And so I go, and our internet stops working at the home that she's in. SIM card stopped working. I can't get a hold of my wife. I'm like, what's going on? And so she took 4 kids and walked in 115-degree weather across, you can just imagine this crazy South Asian area of town. 4 kids, just nuts. You got cows and rickshaws and everything, to the cell phone office to try to figure out how to get internet going again. This is while I'm gone. And so she was enduring a lot. And
that week was almost my breaking point.
Yep.
That was the hottest week of the year, the hottest temperatures I'd ever experienced. And I think we had one of the kids started throwing up, and I couldn't communicate with my husband or anyone. And I just felt isolated and alone and terrified.
So those are the stories that don't get told a lot of times, because being able to endure that is what allowed us to stay there to do God's work. Because we had to be able to stay there together. And that was just the beginning of a lot of rough situations where we felt very alone and isolated. But what it did is it drew us back together. And so we would have family church. We would get together as a family. And then while we were doing that as a family, we were working I was in different house churches all over the city. And so slowly those started to multiply out. And I'd go and I'd talk to people, and literally was doubling every 3 to 6 months. And this is like 10 different people, all doubling the number of churches every 3 to 6 months. And so we were just, one of the things that was by God's grace, he gave it to us that we actually got to see fruit that helped us stay on the field. Because when you see fruit, it's like, this is amazing. Mm-hmm. We were seeing people healed. We were seeing, there was demons being cast out, lots of healing, all sorts of things were happening. And so we were getting to see this fruit, but I was also in the back of my mind preparing myself for moving to a country that's had hard soil. I was like, what about the guys that God has called to an area where they're going to till soil for their entire life or many, many years? And I was like, I need to prepare myself for that. And I don't know if I've got the faith for that, because right now I've got an easy one. I get to see the fruit. I don't have to go operate by faith. I'm operating by faith in my life, yes, but by faith, I'm not having to sit there and trust the Lord is going to reach these people. I'm seeing that happen before my eyes. And so that was really incredible for us. Over the next 3 years, some pretty crazy stuff happened. We saw the work expand to a bunch of different states. God put together a team of 10 national partners in our city. And a year and a half, I knew we were going to be there for 3 years. Year and a half, I said, I'm going to try to find people for a year and a half. And the last year and a half, I'm going to try to help them make sure that they can operate without me. And so I needed to work on exit. And by God's grace, really, he did that. And so these brothers and sisters were just incredible people. They came together as a team. And as a team, they really just, by the end of the 3 years, they weren't leaning on us very much at all. I remember one time we had taken just to show the beauty of multiplication, we'd taken a family vacation and we were out on the beach. And I'm calling one of my guys, and I'm talking, and Lindsay overhears me say, wait. Okay. All right.
That's all right.
We were out on the beach.
Start again. Yep.
So we were out at the beach, and Lydia overhears me say, wait. I'm on the phone, and I say, wait. How long was he dead? And so we'd seen a guy come back to life, a kid come back to life, and I think there were like 30 churches started out of that miracle. And so God was moving in a bunch of ways, thousands of people come to faith, and it was incredible to see what God was doing. And again, none of it was by our own hand, any of our own understanding or anything. We just felt like we were just stumbling forward, and God had clearly told us to come here so that we'd understand what he's capable of. And at the end of 3 years, we've been checking to see God is now the time to move to Southeast Asia. And it was evident it was. And we came here a year ago, and it was pretty cool to see that the soil has changed. There's an optimism in the bride. There's a desire to see, a desire that really aligns with God's heart, that none should perish. There's more of that desire here, and they're asking for help on how to multiply. We even found some people that have multiplied to second generation. And one of the most encouraging pieces that I think would just show typically how God has operated through this whole thing, because I can't claim, or we can't claim any of it, was we got here and a guy said, he told us, he's a national brother here. He said, 12 years ago, God told me that movement was coming to our country, and it was coming through South Asia. And I had just shared our story with him, had him over for dinner. And he looks at me right after that and he says, I didn't realize it was going to be an American that came, but you're the guy. And I looked and said, well, Lord willing, and he goes, no, not Lord willing. You're the guy. How do we start? And so, again, God was preparing people, and the soil here is in a drastically different place. He needed us to wait 3 years because he needed the soil to get ready. And I think he's doing that around the world because we're finding him just move in a faster pace than we've ever seen before. And so we're just glad to be here and praying that the Lord does it again.
What's he been doing in the life of your kids during this journey?
That's a good question. It has been fun to watch our kids process through things. They're getting a very different childhood than we were raised with. Just living globally. They've also been exposed to a lot more like poverty. Obviously a lot of idol worship. And we have a lot of good discussions in our house about things that we see out on the street. They've seen different cultural norms, that things that are not okay in America that are deemed as okay in other places. And we keep processing through, okay, let's go back to the scripture. What does the scripture say about this? Is this something that the Lord tells us is good? Is this something that scripture even talks about? Maybe it's just something that our culture values or doesn't value. They've seen different ways that families operate, as a lot of Asia is more communal than America is individualistic. They actually, our oldest three, made a decision all together at the same time 2 years ago. 2 years ago now, I think, to follow Jesus. They all made the decision together as we were studying the Word, and they operate as kind of a group. Like you'll see a family come to faith together. It was fun to watch our own children do that together. They kind of discussed it. Yeah. They just discussed the story that we were talking about, and it was Easter, and talking about Jesus dying and raising from the dead, and they just were all talking about it, and they were like, yeah, why wouldn't we believe this? And they all believed together, and then
right up in the foothills of Himalaya. It was awesome.
Yeah, we were on a little family vacation for Easter, and then 2 weeks later.
2 weeks. Yeah. Oh, this was really fun. So 2 weeks later, our oldest was with us at a training of some working with some Muslim brothers from a very secure area, and so we were training on baptism, and it was really, really quite fun. They were practicing all the different methods of baptism, and my son was there, and he was watching it, and it was just a really joyful time. Well, I didn't know this, but he came home and he gathered his sisters and said, "Hey, So in the Bible, when people believed, they were baptized immediately. He picked that up from the training. And
how old is your son at this stage?
9, 10.
9.
Yeah, 9. Yeah, 9.5. Yeah, there you go. And so he came back and shared that with his sisters, and they talked about it for a little while. And they came to us as 3 of them. They said, we have decided that we want to be baptized because people were baptized in the Bible immediately. And I was like, okay, and so every parent, I think, struggles sometimes with when and how do you baptize your kids, and so it just became like. So I interrogated them for a little while, and it was evident they were sure of this. They're like, we're convinced. And so we filled up the kiddie pool, and Lydia got to dunk our oldest, and then he turned around and dunked the second one, and then she turned around and dunked the third one, and it was just such a joyful time. And we've always kept our kids. I typically always take at least one kid with me. So I'll be traveling internationally. They love going to all these different places. So we'll be traveling to different countries. I'm almost in a different country once a month, except for right now in coronavirus. And I take one kid with me. What was cool is, what happened with that is we realized instead of dad being gone on another work trip, it was, dad's with, Brookie, dad's with whoever, and so, and that means my special trip is coming. And so they all knew their trips throughout the year that they were going to go be with dad. And so it wasn't dad's got his thing. It was everybody gets their turn at a special trip. And so, we'd be in Japan, and my son, he would plan all the things he wanted to see. So he had to do research, and he said, I want to go see this. And so I would go do a training, and I'd say, I just need one day off because I need a rest day, and I'm going to take my son. And so they would give us one day off. So everywhere I'd go, I'd have a rest day set up, and we would go have a fun day in whatever country we were in. And so this was it's not a typical childhood, but it worked with our family rhythms, and it was really joyful.
Right.
He is coming back. The Great Commission will be fulfilled. Mission will die. It will go away when there's a final day. And so someday there's going to be the last person to hear the gospel. And I kind of pray that, I pray that I'd be the one that shares the gospel with the last one. Like how cool would that be? Like, share the gospel and all of a sudden Jesus comes back, right? Like somebody's going to be the last person to share the gospel and the last person to hear. And so a completed Great Commission is one that I see where every person's going to get to hear the gospel and have an opportunity to understand that God wants nobody to perish. And so from what I'm been able to experience in my just limited time and in our limited time, we've just been like, we're trusting the Lord is preparing the people necessary to reach every person. And just like he prepared those people here in this country, he prepared people in South Asia. He's preparing people. They might not even believe in Jesus yet, but they're out there. I had another guy here. He said, the Lord told me the other day that there's 7,000 people in our city ready to join, to follow Jesus. And I was like, wow, well, let's go find them. That's less than 1% of the population. That's not very many. I believe you. That's totally going to happen. And so there's 7,000 out there that if they'll hear, they'll believe. Let's go. And so I guess what we're trusting the Lord for is that he's going to do what he said he's going to do. And then we just want to kind of that Thessalonians, not quench the Spirit, because the Spirit's got a pace. And the best I can tell, the only ability I have is to slow him down in some ways, to quench him. And so I think we're just trusting the Spirit to do what he does and pray and try to abide fast enough to keep up with him.
Well, if you're enjoying the Movements podcast, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps. I'm Steve Addison for the Movements podcast.